The second resurrection was the raising of the old world saints out from the realm of Sheol or Hades, or the realm of death, or as out from among the dead. Okay? Now, in the Old Testament, God made several promises to Israel that he would raise them out of Sheol, which is the place where when the person's biological body died, remember they did not have the eternal life and the presence of God within. So God had this temporary, I'm going to use the word holding place, right? If you don't like that word, I apologize, but I'm trying to find a word that, or a term that would be sufficient for what I'm trying to explain. So Sheol, unfortunately, Sheol is translated in the King James and some Bibles as the word hell. Okay? But hell is not a biblical word. Hell comes from it's a pagan word which meant a place of torture and punishment. But in the Bible, hell most times means where the dead go. Whether you're righteous or you're unrighteous, you go to Sheol. Right? But what I'm saying, that the King James interpretation renders the word Sheol as hell. Okay? But hell is not a biblical word. It comes from pagan origins. The word that the Bible uses is Sheol in the Hebrew, and in the Greek, Hades. And this was the place where when the saint died, when the Israelite people died, they were kept in this place to be resurrected after Christ had come to secure eternal life for them. Okay? So that promise, for example, is found in Daniel chapter 12. Okay? Daniel chapter 12. So after that resurrection happened, then that's why Sheol, or Hades, which we just read, was cast into the lake of fire, because its purpose was fulfilled. Okay? But anyway, I'm looking for Daniel chapter 12 to show you this promise of resurrection. So in the last chapter of Daniel, we read, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which stands for the children of thy people." And thy people here would be Israel. Okay? "And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation even to that same time." So this time here was during the time when the Christians were being persecuted by the Jews, the apostolic church. This was fulfilled when the apostolic church were being persecuted by the Jews. Why can I say that? Because the first martyr, the first Christian martyr, which was Stephen, just before he died, he was given a vision, and he says, "I see the Son of Man standing on the right hand of power." Now, so in other words, he saw Jesus standing on the right hand of power. And Jesus' heavenly name is Michael, because the name Michael means he who is God. Okay? Mikael. The word El is God. Me, he, Ka, who is God. Okay? So when Christ stood up was when the persecution of his people was occurring. Okay? And so that's why Christ says, remember in John chapter 5 verse 28, he says, "The hour is coming in the which those that are in the graves," this was the same thing it was talking about here. Look in verse 2. It says, "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." So you remember? So this is a judgment. This is a resurrection to judgment. Those who was resurrecting to everlasting life were those who did good. And those who resurrected to shame and everlasting contempt were those who did evil. So it's a resurrection to judgment according to the law of the knowledge of good and evil, right? So whether you did good, life. If you did evil, contempt, judgment, okay? So that promise was what was given to Israelite and also Daniel. Look in verse 13, it says, "But go thou thy way," meaning go Daniel, go thy way till the end. Which end is this? It's the end of the old covenant age. Okay? So that's where you're going to have the judgment. That's where you're going to have the resurrection. "For thou shalt rest." So there he will go in Sheol or Hades to await this resurrection. "And you shall stand." So there is the resurrection. The word resurrection actually means to stand up or to rise up. "You shall resurrect in thy lot or in your inheritance." Jesus says, there is about to be a resurrection. When people hear his voice, they shall live. That's the first resurrection. And then he says, "And the time is coming when the dead who are in the tombs," now he's talking about Daniel. He's talking about the old covenant saints. He says, "They shall hear the voice and they shall come forth." Okay, and they shall receive the reward of their judgment. If they did good, life. If they did, and that's eternal life. If they did evil, well, they will perish, right? So Christ died on the cross. He secured for humanity the first resurrection, meaning the reconnection with God. He poured out the Spirit on the day of Pentecost. Right? He poured out the Spirit on the day of Pentecost, here where you see the man with the flame. But on the same day of Pentecost, Peter preaching in Acts chapter 2 verse 34, he says, "David has not yet ascended." So David was still awaiting resurrection. Okay? Then later on, around 55, Paul said, there is about to be a resurrection. I'm going to show you these texts. He says there is about to be a resurrection. Okay? And remember, Daniel says that at the end of the days, or at the end of the age, the old covenant age, which was waxing old and ready to vanish away, at the end of that age, God will fulfill his promise to Israel and resurrect them out of the tomb, give them eternal life so that they can dwell in their heavenly spirit bodies, not earthly bodies. Okay? So that resurrection happened, and that is a one-time event. Okay? The second resurrection is a one-time event. Because as in the new world now, in which we dwell, when we receive Christ, when we receive the presence of God, we are already resurrected while we're still in our mortal bodies. So there is no need for a resurrection of the dead out of the graves anymore. So the second resurrection is a one-time event.